Welcome, everyone. This is a great turnout for a Saturday morning. I am Charlie Moore with Sustainable Middlesex and the Lexington Climate Action Network, and you are attending the 10th annual meeting of Sustainable Middlesex. Thanks for joining forces today with your colleagues in neighboring municipalities to address the climate crisis. For those who are not familiar with it, Sustainable Middlesex is a network of local grassroots climate action groups that are focused on public awareness of and advocacy for policies that support climate sustainability, mitigation, and adaptation. Our goals include bringing activists together for networking, inspiration, and sharing tested ideas and actions. We are largely centered in Middlesex County, but we welcome activists from all around Massachusetts. I was delighted to see someone from Marion joining us today. Allow me to take a minute to thank the great planning team that made this possible. Our organizing committee includes Lisbeth Bornhoff, Tom Ebrecht, Alan Field, Marcia Jens, Dean Hickman, Mary Yardley, Brad Hubbard Nelson, Ricky Peppo, Larry Yu. And our Zoom managers are Ken Karnowski and Chris Vanderroads. Thank you all for making today's event possible. And thank you to Mass Energize for providing the Zoom capabilities. I'd also like to thank 25 of the co-sponsors for this event. Too numerous to name, but thank you for supporting this event and all the work you are doing to save the planet and the species that call it home. I'm delighted to have several legislators here with us today. I'd like to recognize them for their effort to support legislation to address climate change. In addition to Senator Mike Barrett, we have Senators William Brownsberger and Jason Lewis. Representatives joining us today include Tammy Gouveia, Sean Garbely, Dave Rogers, and Michelle Sicolo. Thank you very much for hanging us and for the work you are doing in the legislature. I am thrilled about today's program. We start off with Mike Barrett, who will give us an update on what's going on in the legislature. Natasha Juliana will introduce us to a California program which engages a full community to address climate change. And then to answer the question many of you raised at last year's event, how do you engage people not normally involved in climate change activism? In other words, how do you reach beyond the choir? To answer that question, we have breakout rooms describing programs that your colleagues have implemented to do just that. The meeting officially ends at 11, but we will keep the Zoom rooms open longer for those who want to continue the discussion. So let's get at it. Mike Barrett will start us off with an update on where efforts stand to address climate change in the Massachusetts legislature. I bet everyone attending this session knows State Senator Mike Barrett. He is the Senate Chair of the Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee. Mike has drafted numerous bills to address climate change, including putting a price on carbon. He is one of the leaders, if not the leader, of efforts to address climate change in the Massachusetts legislature. Excuse me. Mike represents the communities of Weston, Waltham, Sudbury, Concord, Lincoln, Chelmsford, and part of Lexington. When you consider how far ahead Massachusetts is from other states, he is arguably the most influential state senator in the country, addressing the climate crisis. Senator Barrett's work and all of your work moves Massachusetts ahead, but it also acts as a catalyst for other states and influences businesses and financial institutions across the country when they are considering energy investments. You can ask questions to Senator Mike Barrett in the chat box, and I will present as many as time allows. Without further ado, please welcome Mike Barrett.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for that kind and over-the-top introduction. The best kind to have as one begins a talk. I appreciate it very much. I'm actually very pleased to be joined by all of you this morning and by my colleagues in the Senate and the House, all of whom are climate leaders. I've noticed we haven't attracted any folks who aren't deeply committed to the issue. So everybody, every legislator on this call is working with me and leading on their own. I want to start at a different point than we've begun in the past. We're somewhat earlier in the Senate drafting process than we've been in past years when I've addressed this group. So I'm going to be posing questions, the sort of questions that my colleagues and I are confronting, rather than supplying ready answers. The debate in the Senate hasn't happened yet, so I'm in no position to speak for my colleagues, although I'll be happy to advance positions of my own. But I want to lead you through some of the sausage-making queries that we ask of each other and of ourselves. And I want to start with an interesting point of contrast. I did go to Glasgow to COP26, the committees of the parties' consultations, the 26th such effort to bring the nations of the world and the states and provinces and cities of the world and towns of the world together on climate questions, because it offers a vivid counterexample that illustrates and underlines the importance of local and state action right in our own state. So I'm joined by Evie Hobbs of my staff, and if she could present the slides, we can get into this. I guess, Evie, you need to hit, yes, thank you very much. So let's move right along to slide number 2. Again, an instructive counter case that should give us in some ways hope for what we can accomplish locally. Next slide. This is just the sort of statement, the preamble actually, to a climate statement that issues every year after one of these get-togethers. And you'll notice that it starts with a preambular language that acknowledges some things and recognizes others, all very important in terms of setting the stage for a discussion that then has to happen. Next slide. Interestingly, in this particular get-together, differences were immediately obvious, as well as similarities and as well as consensus. So this redlined point here in the discussion about the science of climate change talks about common but differentiated responsibilities. That's key language, sort of signaling language in these international concords. Respective capabilities, mentions of different national circumstances all underline the fact that the nations of the world aren't really ready yet to walk in lockstep. And in particular, this kind of language draws a distinction between developed nations, such as our own, and developing nations, because really we're asking the developing nations to forego the stage of economic development that we and our antecedents here in the States all went through in order to become the working class and middle class communities that we are, to the extent that we're working in middle class. We're asking the developing nations to skip the industrialization stage, because that's the stage where most of the pollution happens, where the stuff going out the smokestacks or into the waterways or into the ground contains not only the most carbon, but the most other pollutants. We need them to skip beyond that to a kind of post-industrial stage where you could say Massachusetts is now a knowledge-based economy with relatively few big polluters in state. That's asking a lot of nations that are still working to supply working class and middle class experiences for the majority of their populace. Next slide. The good news, and we're now in part 4 of a multi-page statement that was issued out of Glasgow, although this was the draft statement still at the very beginning. We did reaffirm Paris 2015, where we've got to keep things below 2, but really we need to make sure that things only that the heat throughout the world is only 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So remember, we're asking developing countries to skip the stage of industrialization that we've all gone through, the wealthier countries have. But notice that the language here is subtly different. We've got a goal of holding the increase to well below 2 degrees. We're going to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. So the nations of the world aren't quite treating 1.5 as they're treating 2 degrees. And that again points to the fact that there's as you can imagine, a great number of varying interests to bring together internationally. Next slide. Or the same slide rather. This should only give us pause if we're parsing language carefully, as diplomats always do, because the goal internationally, beginning in Paris and carrying forward, is not to get to net zero by 2050. It's to get to net zero around mid-century. So again, you begin to see the difficulty of pulling together absolute consensus here. Next slide. This was disappointing to me when I was in Glasgow, and to many of us. The nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, are the commitments that each country makes to reducing emissions within its own borders, right? And Paris in 2015 anticipated that in 2020, there would be a substantial revision downward to the amount of emissions countries would permit themselves. So as soon as you see the mention of 2022 instead of 2020, you realize again that there's been slippage, not just among developing nations who are struggling, as I say, to forego that critical stage of industrialization, but it's also here represents slippage among the more advanced and the wealthier countries of the world. We've had to take 2020, when we expected these NDCs to be strong, and to ask instead that by the end of this year, the NDCs be where they really must be. Let's take a look at now at paragraph 36. Next slide. This represents developments which happened at the very end of Glasgow. The good news, although it's mixed news really, is that coal had never been mentioned in any previous climate pact. Coal as a fossil fuel was not called out in Paris, as a matter of fact, nor were fossil fuel subsidies. So at the beginning, I should say, of Glasgow, we were pleased, although it has to be measured pleasure again, because it doesn't seem in some ways to be the progress we'd like, but we were pleased to see efforts to phase out coal power and fossil fuel subsidies. That did represent real progress. But over the course of the 2 weeks I was there, this language was subject to more scrutiny than any other phrasing, perhaps, in the proposed Glasgow Climate Pact. So the language at the beginning of the 2 weeks, and that's the language we're looking at now, was weakened on day 13 of the 14-day Glasgow get-together, with some disquieting changes. Next slide. A number of countries, and I'm not just talking about our adversaries of ours, Russia, mainland China, a number of countries that are our allies, and they would include India and Australia, Union of South Africa, were disquieted about the call for the phase out of coal power. They wanted to put a qualifying adjective in front of the term coal power to make it clear that some of this fossil fuel source could be salvaged somehow due to abatement technology. So unabated coal power turned out to be what was targeted for phase out. That was, remember, on day 13 of the 14 days. And similarly, because of opposition by India and Australia, South Africa, and other allies, we were suddenly no longer for phasing out fossil fuel subsidies. We were for phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, which held out at least the theoretical hope that such subsidies, if they were efficient, could somehow be maintained. Very disappointing language, but that wasn't the end of it. On day 14th, the last day of Glasgow, really, it ended on a Friday. I was headed to the airport a Saturday morning when suddenly the negotiators who had remained and reconvened Saturday morning for a 14th day, suddenly something else changed. Next slide. India, in particular, decided that it could not support the phase out of even unabated coal power. Phase out, India felt, given its dependence on coal to generate electricity for a still very poor population for which electricity is a breakthrough, India felt that the phase out, the verb form was too strong. The best they could support, they decided at the 11th hour, 59th minute, was the phase down of unabated coal power. And this is where the Glasgow statement concluded. So one asks oneself, wow, two things are of interest here and were of interest here to me as somebody who labors on statewide policy back here in Massachusetts. I was struck, first of all, by the level at which folks like John Kerry need to work. They're not at the execution stage, which is where we are in Massachusetts and where at times national policy in the states is. Internationally, they're still quarreling over language, which will trigger real policies that will lead ideally to the execution of those policy ideas. John Kerry spends his time at the moment quarreling about the wording of sentences, which are a kind of prelude to action. That's a sobering thought. And the second thing that occurred to me here is that the ability to forge international action is quite limited. And one might ask why this is so. Next slide. You could say, how could these sentences, which are just words on paper, how could it have happened that they should have been so weakened over time? And the answer, interestingly, and we can go to the next slide, is that unlike what happens in any legislative body that I know of, everything in these international climate conferences requires absolute unanimity. So India is Joe Manchin. Australia is Kristen Sinema. We don't even need Russia or mainland China to play the bad country. When you've got to forge absolute unanimity, given the divergence of interests internationally, it's easy for things to freeze up, extraordinarily easy. And that, of course, is because fundamentally, we do not have a world legislature. We don't have an international Congress that can vote binding policy. It's going to be possible, but very difficult to forge meaningful reductions internationally with this unanimity requirement. I mean, you talk about the problems with a filibuster, you talk about the difficulties with supermajority votes. Can you imagine going into town meeting or city council in your community and needing unanimous approval before something can happen? Wow. So that brings home to all of us, I think, the importance of acting locally and in the state and in the country if we can. Next slide. Why don't we go on to the next slide? As you might imagine, the formal agreement forged in Glasgow doesn't have that much to offer Massachusetts. Next slide. For one thing, unbelievably enough, remember, it was a breakthrough that coal be mentioned. But the word transportation, which makes the discussion a little more real, appears nowhere in the Glasgow Climate Pact. Now, there was lots of discussion of transportation policies that I attended in Glasgow. Decent work got done in terms of collaboration at the city level and the state level, internationally, I mean, among the cities of the world, say, and the towns of the world. But as a formal matter, it's striking that transportation as a term was nowhere to be seen. And similarly, next slide, the word building doesn't appear. And I'm now speaking to all those folks in towns around here who've been working so hard on their home rule petitions with respect to the net zero stretch code. Can you believe that the word building, which again makes discussions of reducing emissions real, doesn't appear anywhere in these international agreements? That's a level of particularity that the nations of the world haven't been able to agree on unanimously, although many nations, of course, would like to go there. Next slide. Now, some of you have seen this slide before, but it's the set of pies that I look at as I try to come up with some proposed language to my colleagues this year in what I hope will be a second Climate Act. You start with global emissions, one of the pies here, and you're immediately struck by the fact that the sources of emissions are reasonably diverse. Extraordinary, isn't it, that 24% of global emissions are attributable to agriculture and land use practices. And you've got, let's say, electricity. Remember India, its dependence on coal. Electricity globally is responsible for 25% of our total emissions problem. Now move over to the US pie, the one in the middle. And what's striking here is that agriculture shrinks down from 24% to 9%. We're still a farming country in some parts, but the problem suddenly is quite contained. And that's a striking difference. But industrial pollution, the pollutants that do still come out of smokestacks from a working factory, still as high within the US as they are internationally. I mean, a click higher, in fact. Now take a look at the Massachusetts pie. Striking difference from both the international and the national pictures, right? Here you've got industry shrunk down to half its level. This is what it means to be a knowledge-based economy. This is what post-industrialism, for better or for worse, looks like. It means that we don't have serious polluters, which is why, by the way, I've always been a little disappointed when climate organizing in Massachusetts still tries to identify the boogeyman of the big polluters, with the exception of some plants that are subject to RGGI, some natural gas electric power plants. We have no big polluters left, which is why one has to look at your neighbor and at oneself when one asks the question, how do we reduce emissions here? The industrial piece is down. And take a look at agriculture and land use, vanishingly small. So you can imagine that for Massachusetts, our attention is focused like laser beams on transportation, buildings, which you can subdivide into residential and commercial, and still the generation of electric power, not as big a problem as it is nationally and internationally, but still meriting our close attention. Transportation, buildings, electric power, that's where the action is for Massachusetts. Next slide. Now I mentioned that here we haven't brought something to the floor yet, so I can't speak definitively about what would be in a Senate bill. That will depend in large part on what my colleagues want to see. But I do want to tell you what we're sussing through, what we're struggling with. Next slide. It is time to, in Massachusetts, to sweat the kind of details that the nations of the world haven't gotten to yet. We've got to make things real, and I know you would all agree with that. The stuff in red highlights the point. And I want to bring attention to requirements that are in the 2021 Climate Act. We're trying to drill down. So we require that each 5-year plan indicate how, to what extent, and when emissions are going to come down in each of 6 economic subsectors, right? We wrote those 6 economic subsectors into law. The limits, the sublimits are as important in the Climate Act of 2021 as the limits. This was a battle we had with the Baker people. It's a battle we won. The sublimits are as binding as the limits. And the plan that the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs must announce by June of this year, so the time is at hand, must indicate how, to what extent, and when emissions are going to come down in each of 6 sublimits, as well as on the overall economy. Needless to say, the reductions in the sublimits are additive and cumulative and have to, in the aggregate, serve the purposes of achieving the overall emissions limit. Similarly, and I'm now looking at bullet number 3, just as an aside, and for the important purpose of benchmarking, we're asking the Secretary in this plan that she's got to surface for us in the next 3 months, we want to know where we are in terms of electric vehicles, in terms of charging stations, in terms of solar installations, both behind the meter and industrial scale, or so-called in front of the meter. We want to know where we are in terms of energy storage and in terms of heat pumps. The idea here is to set a set of benchmarks so that we can begin to realize, well, just how far behind we are, but also to now know what we have to grow into and where we have to progress. Next slide. But how do we deliver on this idea of granularity? That's what confronts us in 2022. Now, I can tell you the sort of things that the Senate's wrestling with, the sort of things I should say that my colleagues have proposed, because it'll give you some idea about how one does drill down and try to deliver. First of all, and this is very disappointing, it's not clear the feds are going to increase their subsidies for, well, let's say the purchase of electric vehicles, right? There may be the opportunity to extract from all the things that Joe Manchin's held up some core climate provisions. It could be that before Congress breaks to run for re-election this year, that those core provisions will pass and get to the president's desk. Among them would be an increase in federal subsidies for EV uptake. The Senate is going to have to sweeten the deal for the purchase of electric vehicles in terms of state policy, because we don't know what the feds are going to do. And in any event, we would want to augment our own support. So when I talk about delivering on sweating out the details, I'm talking about taking a look at the $2,500 we provide for individual electric vehicle purchase. I'm talking about extending that possibly to not beyond cars and so-called light duty trucks to medium duty and heavy duty vehicles, including vans of the sort that move around in every community. So you'd want to expand the types of vehicles subject to the subsidy. You would want to deepen the subsidy beyond the 2,500, and there are different ways you could do that, right? You could double the 2,500. That would be subject to appropriation, but at least in the near term, ARPA monies and stuff would seem to supply the funds we need. But you could do something different. You could suspend the sales tax for the next 6 years on purchases of EVs. That would be attention getting. That would be a relief to you when you purchase an EV at the point of purchase, something that's harder to deliver on when it comes to these rebates, the $2,500. So it's in play to consider a suspension of the sales tax, although there are important arguments against it as well. But I just want to give you a sense as to where we are in terms of sussing out these possibilities. And then, of course, with respect to air source and ground source heat pumps, there we're talking, among other things, about a strengthened mass save, and that is important, right? As we've seen in our local weekly newspapers, you can get a $10,000 subsidy for installation of air and ground source heat pumps. That's an important step forward. You can even get a subsidy if you're transitioning away from your current natural gas system, something that hadn't been available because natural gas is fracked and dirt cheap, cheaper than its real cost, in fact, and so had actually been not subject to the mass save subsidies, which require some cost savings be realized by the consumer, right? Which is why you want to price fossil fuels at their proper price, because underpricing actually eluded the mass save subsidy program until we changed mass save in the 2021 Climate Act. So you get some sense in any event, with respect to EVs, about what it might mean to adopt these benchmarks, but then to drive adoption through increased subsidies. This is how you would deliver on detail. Next slide. A second big idea in the 2021 Climate Act is to empower state policy, but also balancing it with empowering local vanguard communities. It's hard to strike the balance, and I've had healthy discussions with a number of you about exactly how that balancing should proceed. It's called into high focus with the discussion that involves local communities, the legislature, but also the Baker people around the net zero stretch energy code. Things are happening every week on this issue, and I know many of you are concerned about it. By the way, earlier this morning, I was at Lincoln's town meeting gathering signatures because I'm running for re-election. And Lincoln today is going to initiate a net zero stretch code provision similar to Lexington's, to Concord's, to Arlington's, to Brookline's. And they know that this represents additional pressure on the Baker people. The big difference here in terms of balancing state policy and local vanguard communities, local vanguard activism, I should say, is that we'd like an option that Lexington wants for itself to be available to every community that opts in. The key question, as you all know, is whether a local community that opts in could opt for all electric and new construction and substantial rehabilitations, right? The Baker folks are balking at all electric. That's where the battle is. I am in receipt, and so are they, of a terrific letter by Attorney General Maura Healey, making it very clear that the language the legislature crafted in the Climate Act of 2021 very clearly gives the Baker folks the power to give locals the power to require all electric. The Baker folks have been kicking up dust about whether there was ambiguity in the Climate Act with respect to their ability to authorize such local action. The Attorney General, who interprets these things from Massachusetts, made it very clear in a comment filed pursuant to Baker administration hearings on the net zero stretch code that the Baker administration has all the authority it needs to permit Lexington or Concord or Arlington or Lincoln to go all electric. That was a critical bit of clarification. I knew our language was sound. I happened to have written that sentence myself. It was good to be validated by the Attorney General. Next slide. So we're, in terms of delivering here, ideally, now that we've cleared away the question of legal meaning, the Baker folks will permit locals to go all electric and new construction if town meeting approves a community's doing so. But if that doesn't happen, if the stretch code doesn't progress in the full text that we expect within the month or so from the Baker people, the new Climate Act of 2022 in the Senate includes a bill which enables us to revisit the issue. The Senate could require that all electric be an available local option. And if we could persuade the House to go along in a conference committee situation, we could remedy the Baker administration's failure to act. So we're keeping the idea in play, and that's how you deliver, as I say, on idea number 2, balancing state policy, but also local vanguard activism. We intend to make sure that the governor, as he exits the stage, cannot single-handedly thwart an important policy. But I just want to make clear, this is something I have to persuade my colleagues in the Senate about, and then my colleagues in the House. We'll see how it fares. I'm cautiously optimistic that we could re-legislate if we needed to. Next slide. A third idea here is greening the grid. As most of you know, the strategy that the world has settled on, and it is interesting, there's a significant degree of consensus on this fundamental point, is that the way to deeply decarbonize is to deeply electrify. You have to put on electricity every vehicle that currently operates on fossil fuel gasoline. And then you need to put on electricity every factory that operates on industrial fossil fuel, every building that operates on industrial fossil fuel to stay warm, and every home that does so as well, right? So greening the grid is critical, because going all electric won't help much if the grid is dirty, if it's dependent itself on fossil fuels. Greening the grid is critical, and I want to give a lot of credit here to the House of Representatives. They see the need to green the grid, and they've come forward this year with a bill, primarily though having to do with offshore wind only, but it's still a bill that fundamentally recognizes the necessity of taking fossil fuels out of the generation of electricity. But here, because remember, the Senate hasn't come forward with a bill of its own yet. This is going to be a dialogue in which we join a conversation with the House. They've gone with essentially an offshore wind bill with a few concessions to other fossil fuel segments. We hope to come back with a bill that emphasizes the greening of transportation, the greening of buildings, as well as the greening of the grid. We want to go wide. The House embraces the general principle, but has gone narrow. Here are the sort of questions the Senate has to think about, and that might represent some differences with the House, although I want to be neutral here. Both arguments have been mounted eloquently by their respective branches. Here's what the Senate, as I say, has to engage with as it considers whether to go along with the House's single-minded focus on offshore wind, or to go more broadly, even within the electric power sector. There are two bills before us. I won't go through all of these because I'm not trying to confuse you, but I'm just giving you a sense of a legislator's dilemma, my dilemma, as I confront this stuff with my colleagues. What should be the starting point of reform in the grid sector? You've got the House's bill, which is very elaborate, very dense. You've got, it's got 32 sections to be specific. The governor's come out with a offshore wind bill of his own that's got 5 sections. I've told my colleagues as we think about which bill to start from, that it's a question of whether we think we can edit Moby Dick or edit the Gettysburg Address. Moby Dick, fascinating, fat, all kinds of terrific tangents and diversions and distractions, but difficult to deal with, right? Or the Gettysburg Address, often remarked upon by those who have thought about Lincoln's words as a miracle of compression and clarity, among other things. So do we start with the compressed version of offshore wind, or do we go with the Moby Dick version? That's and I might add, in a very tight time frame, since we're all getting out of session by the end of July. There are some subsidiary questions that arise as you consider whether to go with the governor's bill or the House. For starters, the two bills are very different. The Department of Energy Resources currently instigates policy and drives clean energy policy. And by the way, under a new governor, we could expect that DOER to be very progressive. The House would like to shift the focus in important respects and go with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. So you need to ask yourself, or at least the Senate does, which of the two agencies should be our negotiating lead with these huge multinationals that build these offshore windmills? Who should engage first with the players, because the agency that engages first sets the important ground rules. And I will tell you that when you're dealing with these international players who negotiate with different states and different nations around the globe, they have a lot of savvy. They've done this a whole bunch. Any given state is at a disadvantage, just in terms of the deepness of their bench, negotiators who know this stuff, and the depth of their knowledge too. So our institutional memory of past negotiations resides within DOER. If we move to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, as the House would have us do, how do we still benefit from what institutional memory we've managed to accumulate? So those clusters of questions revolve around bullet number 1, and they're questions that I'm wrestling with right now. And then bullet number 2, how much
Mike,
should
if I,
Massachusetts overweight offshore wind relative to other clean energy sectors? The House's position is that offshore wind is unprecedented, that it deserves the lion's share of resources going forward. Effectively, Mass Clean Energy Center would have nothing else to do except institute the myriad new requirements and new programs around offshore wind that the House would institute. That's an interesting question. The biggest source of jobs in Massachusetts is actually around energy efficiency. You know, the folks who go up, take a look at the insulation in your house, the heating system in your basement. In terms of jobs, including industry entry-level jobs, and especially for low-income groups, by far the biggest clean energy subsector is the energy efficiency subsector.
Mike, if I
Number
could
two, in
break
terms
in
of
here.
sheer numbers of jobs, is solar. We know this because the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center is sized the number of jobs that each clean energy sector would give rise to. So solar is number two. Again, very important because it's
Mike,
it's
if I
trainable.
could break in
You
here.
don't have to. I'm sorry, Charlie, were you going to say something?
I am. This is absolutely exciting, all these things that you are focused on. And we're so pleased that you're focused on the home rule issue, which is a major issue for all of us. And the energy you're putting into this is just fantastic and inspiring. Unfortunately, we do have some more speakers we'd like to get to. So I'm wondering if you could wrap it up for us.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, let me just, so this last slide is in fact pretty much the last slide. I won't go through all the reservations or all the questions one might ask about the House's overweighting offshore wind, but you get a sense of the kind of choices that we face when we think about the solar industry, energy efficiency, the greening of transportation, and the greening of the grid itself, the line workers. We have shortages, Charlie, in terms of ability to staff up all five of those sectors. Again, transportation, utility workers, solar, wind, energy efficiency. Where are we going to find all the workers? How can we do justice to each of the five? That's one of the dilemmas the Senate's wrestling with as it considers the House's very interesting piece of legislation. And with that, I will close, Charlie, and invite any comments that you might have. And thank you for keeping me on track in terms of time.
Thank you, Mike. This is so exciting, all the things that you keep moving forward. And that's why I think Massachusetts is a leader, although our next speaker from California may challenge our parochial perspective here. But I just can't thank you enough. And I know everyone here appreciates that too. So I'm going to stand up and give you a standing ovation.
Well, I'll stand up and give a sustainable Middlesex one too, because you guys, the grassroots, you're the backbone. You keep us all working.
Thank you very much, Mike.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Now I'd like to turn it over to Alan White, who will introduce our next speaker. Alan.
Yes, hello, greetings everyone. I would like to introduce Natasha Juliana, the Cool Petaluma campaign director. Incidentally, the city of Petaluma is just north of the San Francisco Bay Area. Natasha will give us an overview of the new Cool Petaluma program, which currently has over 300 volunteers committed to organizing their blocks this year to engage in small neighborhood meetings to reduce emissions and increase resiliency to climate change. She will also give more information in the following breakout session in room 7. Welcome, Natasha. It's all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I am delighted to help put what my friend Trayton Heckman likes to call the public wind in the political sails so that we can get more and more people behind great leaders like Senator Barrett. So I'm happy to be here and talk more about sort of that on the ground grassroots level. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that Cool Petaluma logo? I hope.
Yes.
Fantastic. So Petaluma won a statewide competition called the Cool City Challenge, which awarded $1 million grants to 3 cities in California who could demonstrate that they have ample community support to achieve major collective action in the race to carbon neutrality by 2030. So you had to have a carbon neutrality by 2030 goal, which we happen to have. Los Angeles and Irvine are the other two winning cities, and now our sister cities, working together as we create a template. What we're really looking to do is find ways to show other cities how to do this as well. And the goal is to roll out 50 cities next year, and then roll it out nationally and internationally. So literally we're helping to create the example for the world, which I think is one of the reasons we've been able to get so many volunteers. People are excited about that. So what this program looks at is both the top down, which is these big moonshot strategies, which can help people like Senator Barrett get these big ideas underway. But what I think is most important for today's discussion about preaching beyond the choir, reaching beyond the choir, is this bottom-up strategy, which is taking place through this Cool Block program, which so we're going to focus more on that bottom-up part. So, and I know this is an often used quote, but I think it is fitting for reminding people that, this Margaret Mead quote, that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And here are some numbers that are happening here in Petaluma to help you believe that a small group of people can truly make a difference. So we started off with one person. Our council member, Linda Fisher, found this grant opportunity. She collected a steering committee of 7 people the end of last summer. They in turn found 25 community partners. Those people then found 300 Cool Block leaders, these volunteers. And we kicked off in January, and those people are now, we're training actually 50 each every 2 months. And those people over the next year are to find about 7 other houses on their block, which will make for 2,400 cool households in Petaluma. And the average house in Petaluma has 3 people in it. So that's 7,200 people we hope to engage by the end of the year. And just for fun, we kind of pulled this out to see what would happen over time if we keep going. So if you look at each Cool Block leader finding just one sister block in the next year to continue the program, then we'll end up with 14,000 people involved by the end of the year. And if you double that again, this is the power of exponential growth. I like to call this my benevolent pyramid scheme. If each of those people then finds one more sister block, or each of those blocks finds one more sister block, then by, too far. Then by 2024, we could get up to 9,600 households going. And if we do that one more time, then we get up to about the population of Petaluma. So I know that's a stretch, but the idea is that you can start with a small group of people, and if you form it right, you can start to grow exponentially in the right way. And so this is what's happening on the ground right now. We've actually got, as of March 2022, we have 85 active Cool Blocks, 283 active households, and about 849 people, and that's just over the first 2 months. So, let's do this. This is what it looks like on the ground. You'll see in our community, it's a small town, it's 60,000 people here, but you can see these are the Cool Block leaders mapped. And we actually have some rural areas that are being included as well. And this actually only represents about the 200 people who've actually signed up for when they're starting. So it even goes beyond this. Let's see. And what are these people going to be doing? Well, they're going to be taking their neighbors on this 5-month-long journey through different action items. The ones highlighted are the ones that the leaders start off with, and the team members share the responsibilities. But the great thing is that for reaching beyond the choir, going to the neighborhood level really makes a lot of sense, because you have this shared, you have a shared interest in the block just by your geographic contiguousness, but then you start to reach beyond just the normal people that you would, your friend group, that kind of thing. So they're going through disaster resilience, carbon reduction, water stewardship, neighborhood livability, and empowering others. These are all big topics in California. As you know, we have had a lot of wildfires, drought, etc. So starting with the disaster resilience has worked really well for us. And then what are these people going to be doing? Well, they got these topic menus that come with the program. And so no matter where you live, if you live in an apartment, a condo, or a house, as a renter, as a homeowner, team members can find and select several actions in each topic area that they most need and are practical for them to do in their household. And then they have a lot of choice in the matter, but it's very clear guidance, which I think is important. And it's tracking the CO2 reductions as you go. You have this little household scoreboard. And as part of the guidance, we're also connecting people with local resources that have available. So that as they take action, they can easily connect into what's going on in our community, so they have more help. And the other interesting thing for working with creating new leaders throughout the community is that we do a lot of work around empowering them to be good leaders. So we know that a lot of climate change is actually about behavior change, and behavior change is really hard. So we know that information itself it can lead to awareness, but it doesn't actually make people change their behavior. So what can we do to help them change their behaviors? And so that's why we actually train our block leaders to have a few tricks up their sleeve for getting unstuck and for helping themselves and their teams be successful. And we also have a lot of community support through the program. We offer coaching. We have these great Zoom and in-person gatherings of our leaders so that they can share ideas, ask questions, support each other, and feel like they're part of a team, which I think has really helped with the momentum. And we're also just out in the community trying to make it fun. I like to say this is climate action made fun. So we do a lot. We're called Cool Petaluma. All of our swag is upcycled. I'm wearing one of our t-shirts today. So we stamp your existing t-shirts or something we find at the thrift store and turn it into a Cool Petaluma shirt. We're out in the community with kids drawing, helping us create our signs, all on recycled fabrics, etc. So really out there trying to make it fun. And this is how we are leaving. This is the words people use to describe how they felt at the end of our big kickoff event in January. And we aspire to keep continuing the spirit alive, making sure that people are inspired, excited, energized, hopeful, optimistic, because it's so much easier to keep people motivated over a long period of time when they're feeling these emotions. So I'm super excited to be in one of the breakout rooms and going to dive into some of the key factors that we are finding are really helping us to reach beyond the choir, and maybe just have some opportunities to discuss how those might translate into your communities. That's it for me. Thanks, Alan.
Hi, I'm Ricky Papo. I'm with the Lexington Climate Action Network, and I want to transfer us to, we're going to be going into breakout rooms right now. So here are our breakout rooms. What we did when we decided which breakout rooms we were going to have this year was we took the Reaching Beyond the Choir and tried to find programs that felt like they did this. They were able to get new people into the conversation and moving them from knowledge to action, like Natasha just spoke about. So breakout room number 1 is on big tent community environmental events, like organizing a sustainability fair or an Earth Day event, just one place where people gather to learn about sustainability. The second breakout room is on Eco Week, which happens in Arlington every year. It's a week-long community engagement, and they'll talk about how to organize this kind of event in your own community. The third breakout room was a successful Belmont program on community drive electric. And it had strategies for, you'll learn strategies for doing the same sort of thing in your community. Which is basically every breakout room will give you the tools or on how these things got organized. Number 4 is about passing a town meeting article. So cool rules for cool planet, passing clean heat, which is something we did in Lexington. And Cindy Ahrens from Clean Heat Lexington will be talking about how we passed that particular article, or in general, how we work and get a lot of buy-in, overwhelmingly voting positively towards sustainability climate articles. The next room number 5 is Mass Energize, which is somewhat similar to Cool Petaluma, other than it's not so neighborhoodly focused, but it could be. So this is about tools for networking to boost sustainable action, showing people what actions they can take. It also adds up the carbon reductions for community. So that's something that many of the communities that are here today are engaged on that platform. Room number 6 is about engaging schools through curriculum and practices, and we'll have representatives from Cooler Communities, which develops curriculum, and the LPS Green Teams, which is a Lexington based group of people who have been focusing on zero waste in our schools. Room number 7 is engaging neighbors, Cool Winchester and Cool Petaluma, both, you just heard about that. If you want to know more about those kinds of events, room number 7. And the last room is room number 8, which is coaching for residential decarbonization. We all know that it's difficult sometimes to get people to go to change out to heat pumps or geothermal, and they need help. I'm sure many of you have gotten a question from residents saying, who should I use? Where do I go to learn about this? People from Heat Smart Alliance and Abode are available to help individuals or communities develop a decarbonization roadmap. So those are our breakout rooms. The breakout rooms are open. So if you know how to get into a breakout room, go right ahead. But if we bring up the next slide, Ken, can we get the next slide? If you don't know how to join a breakout room, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, your Zoom screen, there's something that says breakout rooms. Click on it. These are the names of the breakout rooms are there. Click join. Then you'll get another little pop-out window. And if it's the room you want to join, click on yes. If it's not, click on no and start all over. So we're going to leave this up. If you have difficulty getting into a breakout room, put it in the chat and somebody will assign you to the room you want to go to. Thank you all for coming today, and I hope you enjoy the breakout rooms.
Ricky, if I could jump in here.
Mm-hmm.
I see Senator Brownsberger has his hand up. He's been a fabulous advocate for legislation to address climate change. And I wonder if we could give him 1 minute as we need to rush off. I see his hand is up.
Sure. Senator Brownsberger, do you want to unmute? Can somebody unmute Senator Brownsberger?
Well,
hey, thank you so much for the moment. I actually wasn't deliberately raising my hand. I was punching buttons on my phone trying to get into a breakout room, but I appreciate the opportunity to say hello, and I'm so appreciative of the leadership of everybody in this room, and especially my colleague, Senator Barrett. We have a great climate team in the Senate, and he is the leader of that team. And together we will make progress in all these dimensions. I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about heat pumps, which is the place that I'm putting a lot of my attention.
thank you very much, Senator Brownsberger. Ricky, it looks like people are going into the rooms pretty effectively.
Yep. I'm going to
Where
try.
should they go if they have a question or an issue?
Just put it in the chat, and Chris and Ken will address it. And I am going to leave and go to my breakout room.
Thank you, Ricky.
My apologies on the delay. I am moving everybody as I can. If you message me in the chat and let me know which room you'd like to be in, I will be there. Oh, the challenge is as everybody is moving, I'm having a bit of a difficulty moving everyone. So just bear with me, doing my best. I'll get you all there as I can. We all have learned to love and hate Zoom over the last year. Judith, I am still working on you. For some reason, I'm just having some trouble, but I'll get you there. There we go. And again, my apologies on the delay. I am moving everybody as quickly as I can. And if you let me know the room numbers, because I can't always see them. Christine, I see you wanted to get into Winchester, but I don't have that right now in my drop-down menu, so I'm going to move to another one. It really helps me if you let me know the number. I see that is 7, so I will move you there now, Christine. Okay. If you could just message me once again, if you're still in chat and want to go into a breakout room, and let me know which room you'd like to be in, I will get you in there as soon as I can. Now that there are fewer people here, it's a bit easier. June, which room was it that you wanted to be in? Can you put that number in chat? I'm not receiving any messages in chat. If there's anyone here in the main room who would like to join a breakout room, please message me the number of the room you'd like to join, and I will scoot you right over there.
I am in the main room and I see the breakout room slide.
Yes, Charlie, we've been leaving that just because we've had a few people who were away from their computer trickling back, but would you like that slide down now?
Yes.
Okay.
And thanks. And did you send out the
Yes, I
notice of?
sent out the broadcast message saying it's
broadcast.
ending in 5 minutes,
Okay,
but we'll shortly send out the,
thanks.
we're not closing, but the main session.
Hi, Megan. I see you're still here. Charlie's going to be doing the closing remarks here in just a second. If you stand by, you'll get to see the close of the presentation here.
Hey, people, I'm just waiting for the other breakout rooms to close and then just make a couple final remarks. It's entirely possible that the other breakout rooms won't close because people are so engaged that they'll just keep going, which is wonderful too.
Sounds like we should maybe do one last warning, asking people to return. Is that what you would like, Charlie?
Well, I don't want to force them to return. They're welcome to return, but they may be involved in breakout room discussions that they want to continue.
Of
And so I
course.
wouldn't want to disrupt that.
Sure.
Okay.
How about
So
you
I-
just, why don't we do one last letting people know that closing remarks are starting? Do you want to give that another minute or so?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Chris, can you see how active the other rooms are now? Can you see if their discussions are continuing?
Everyone is still in the breakout rooms at this time.
Yeah.
No one has come back, except we have a few people
Okay.
here who perhaps we've got a couple people maybe starting to trickle back in. So
I just sent the second message, so we
There we
should
go.
see more people coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful if they're so engaged that they want to keep the discussion going.
Well, they just got the final warning, so let's see what happens. Not warning, but message.
It's great to see all the participation in the breakout rooms. Often in an event like this, after the main speaker leaves, everybody else leaves, but everyone was staying right on into the breakout rooms.
Yeah, there was a lot of participation. All of the breakout rooms had pretty good participation, and some very, very large.
It was great to see all the activity and the interchange in the different rooms. And isn't Mike Barrett a wonderful state senator? I think we're really lucky to have him.
He's such a leader. He's great. Yeah.
I'm going to give people a couple more minutes. I must say, I don't know if Ricky's here. I am tempted to include that other video now, Ricky, that you wanted to put in. But I think people are coming in kind of quickly now. I'll give them a couple more minutes to see if they're going to wrap up or keep going. I love seeing all these different towns. I think we had Brookline, and I don't think we had Wakefield on our list. We should needed to do that.
Charlie, I know that you said this before, but it might be worth just reminding ourselves that the recordings for each of the different breakout rooms will be available.
Yes, I think that's a key point. I'm going to give it one more minute and then I'll summarize, but I'd also love to hear other people's thoughts of the event and any advice they can give Sustainable Middlesex. Well, since it's 5 after, I'm going to charge ahead right now. I first of all want to thank all of you guys for attending. You know, one of the things I love about this event is just connecting with so many other climate activists and know that we're not alone in the Lexington Climate Action Network, that you guys are all out there charging ahead. And what Mike will tell you is it's when you bring a lot of people together like this, this is really your opportunity to make a difference. And this is the kind of activity that promotes change in the legislature, and really thrilled to see that. Now, I think one of the biggest frustrations people have is that they're only able to go to one room, and they wanted to hear the other presentations. I know I felt that way. And as Dean was mentioning, we are recording all of these rooms, so you'll be able to view them at a later date. Liz, would we send out a information to the people who registered, identifying where they can find those videos? And so I think many of you might find that, gosh, you wish you could keep going with the discussion and that you would like help transferring some of these programs to your town. So let us know about that and we'll see what we can do to facilitate that change. The other thing I would love to know is how many of you, based on this event, have actually started bringing a new program to your town, because that's really our goal. But I'll open it up if other people have comments, advice they'd like to give. I'd love to hear how you thought the event went. Anyone else that you would like to hear as a speaker for future events? Any other programs that you've heard another town is doing that you'd like to get more information on? Yes, Cicely. You need to unmute yourself. Ken?
Okay, now it wouldn't let me unmute, sorry. It came up in our breakout room, just it'd be great to consider plastics in this universe, given the factory emissions and the fact that it's kind of plan B for the oil and gas industry, and the fact that it's mostly incinerated. So that's another carbon, there's the carbon foot. So that's just what topic I'd love to see addressed.
Excellent. Did you notice the chat from Representative Ciccolo and Jason Lewis, where they talked specifically about that? So I think that could be a really interesting one. Those are the two leaders really in that area.
Representative Ciccolo and Jason
Lewis.
Great, thank you for
We
that.
did a chat on it because those two are really.
I'm re-chatting the link to her webpage with the information about it.
And the other thing I would say is, from my own perspective, I've been organizing public art projects with environmental messaging.
Yeah.
So I think that could be this has been so amazing. This has been a wonderful conference, but sometime if you wanted to include that in sort of as a community engagement strategy, I appreciated the folks from California talking about how they offer fun activities like silk screening a t-shirt or the kids making signs. That's certainly one example of how to use the arts to engage people. And then there are others so that kind of open a space for other kinds of discussions. And I pursued this in Arlington, and one of your speakers, Charlotte Milan, is a big ally. So I just mentioned that.
I think that's an excellent idea. And it seems to me that would have to have impact on a wider community, but I don't know how you could measure it or figure it out. Other thoughts, people? Does this meet your expectations in terms of getting some ideas for other programs to do in your community?
I'll say one thing, Charlie, that I meant to say as I was talking about the breakout rooms, which is if you've done something in your town that you think was super successful, or even if it wasn't a large event, but somehow you know that you got some people to adopt new sustainable practices, whether it's planting pollinator gardens or installing more heat pumps, let us know. We all need to be sharing. I think Sarah Dooling likes to close her emails with, we're more powerful together. And that's true. Here we are from all of these towns. And I'm sorry we missed many of the towns that people are from in our list. We will update that list just so we can recognize where people came from. So let us know. Let's all keep in touch so we can help each other.
We don't automatically send out Sustainable Middlesex emails to everybody who registered for this conference. So if you want to get emails from Sustainable Middlesex, please send us a note and we'll put you on our list. But Ricky, your point is so great. We do want to know how to share things, and a lot of us, I think part of the reason for starting Sustainable Middlesex, rather than trying to figure out what to do next and start reinventing the wheel, let's find out what someone else is doing. And then what I've heard from a lot of these speakers is, hey, if you need help in your community, I'd be happy to give you some advice to get it going. And I think that's wonderful. Other thoughts, comments, ideas?
Yeah, Charlie, in terms of sort of a public resource where people can go after the meeting to find this information or who to contact if they want to organize such an event, is that something we can set up, or where should people go?
Yeah, great question, Dean. I think if people want to follow up on an idea, email us at Sustainable Middlesex and we'll figure out, we'll connect them with the key person. And if enough people ask about it, I think we could have a separate session on that.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no other further comments. Ricky.
I just want to say one thing. I'm noticing a couple of rooms are still going. So if anybody would like to join a room, you'll see, if you go to breakout rooms, you'll see it has, the people aren't grayed out. I think it would be fine to just drop into a breakout room and see what they're talking about, which is, I think, where I'm going to go next.
Ricky, any chance you could bring up that other video now?
Oh, you mean Song for the Earth?
The other one that we were going to include, but then we didn't.
Catherine Hayhoe?
Catherine Hayhoe.
Okay.
You could bring that up. I thought that was wonderful. And share that with the group.
Sure.
I'm noticing a lot of people are dropping emails and things into the chat. If you could send them directly to sustainablemiddlesex@gmail.com. It's on the Eventbrite site and you've probably gotten emails from us. That would be very helpful to keep them all in one place.
Will also make sure that this chat record is shared with all of the Sustainable Middlesex planners. So we will have access to everything that is in chat, including all of the wonderful links that have been dropped in there as well.
Do you think that's going to be possible, Ricky?
As soon as I find it, it will be possible. Oh, you know what? Ken, I think if you go to the playbook, oh, I took it out, didn't I? I don't know where it is, Charlie. I took it out. We can,
All right.
let me, hold on.
We can send the link to people too in the follow-up email.
It's a short video, makes an important point and wonderfully done.
If you know Catherine Hayhoe, she is very inspirational in letting us know that individual actions do make a difference. While we can't do this without the state and the federal action, no one's going to come to our house, knock on our doors and tell us to take out our gas burners and put in heat pumps. We're going to have to do that. And what we want from the state is help, money, expertise, workers. That's what they need to provide for us, but we all need to take that action ourselves.
I think the other point, and Liz, maybe you can send the video over to Ricky. I thought you found it. But the other thing, the point it makes, I thought, was the importance of just talking about climate change when you have the opportunity with people. In a friendly, positive way, not necessarily trying to convert. I do see the breakout rooms are continuing along, so feel free if you wish to go back. One of them has 24 people still engaged, another is 15.
So I'm going to head into another room.
All right, Ricky, thank you.
For anyone with us at this time, please feel free to join the active breakout rooms. It looks like we've got Engaging Neighbors with Winchester and Petaluma, still very active. Coaching for Residential Decarbonization is still going on. Engaging Schools with Curriculum and Practices, still happening, still good discussion. Tools and Networking for Community for Local Action, still happening. Looks like people have joined back into Cool Rules for a Cool Planet. So some of those breakout rooms have some great discussions going on. Please feel free to join those breakout rooms. If you need any help, just let us know.
Chris and Ken, fabulous job, you guys. Thanks for making everything work so smoothly today.
I came back because I found the Catherine Hayhoe. So I'm going to put the link into the chat, and if Ken or Chris want to share it for those who are still in the main room, this room.
Okay, I can do that.
Will we know where to send the video?
Brad's on top of that.
Okay. Oh, and I can reach Brad. No worries there.
So I don't know. I'd like to set up a drive folder in the Sustainable Middlesex area for people to upload them.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if I can do that. Let me see.
I think you have editor access, but if
Window.
not, I can set up a folder.
Yeah, and then we should give editor access to all of the
Room managers.
room managers.
So
Okay.
excuse me, I don't see my recording converting yet. Is that because I'm still on Zoom?
That is why, once
That's
this
right.
meeting is ended, then they will start.
Ricky had to remind me to start record. It's like in bold on my notes and I'm chattering on about speakers and how,
And I apologize that broadcast didn't go out. Moving people to breakout rooms got a little hairy.
Oh, no, that wasn't your job. I had it in my notes. I just didn't look at my notes.
And it happened. It's hard in the moment. Would you like me to share that video?
It's mostly co-hosts in here, but we do have a few of our guests as well. So sure, why not?
Bye, everyone. Wonderful.
Bye, Dad.
Good
Great
to see you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Kat.
I think one of the biggest
Actually, now,
questions we
Ricky,
all
I'm
have when
sure
it comes to climate change
This is a good time to
is there
share it,
hope?
unless a lot more
People often ask me, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. How can I make a difference? But if there is one thing that I wish everybody would do, it's talk about it. I'm suggesting that we talk about why it matters. What do I care about passionately that is being affected by a changing climate? Does it relate to my kids? Does it relate to something I love doing, like birding or fishing or even hunting? Does it relate to the economy or national security or the community or the place where I live? Let's talk about what it means to us, and then let's also talk about solutions, because there are amazing solutions. When it comes to climate change, we feel as if it is this giant boulder standing dead still and nobody's trying to push that boulder uphill to fix the problem. The reality is that giant boulder is already starting to roll. It's got hundreds, thousands, even millions of hands. We just need a few more hands to get it rolling faster, but it is moving in the right direction. But when we look at what's happening with people, that's where I find hope.
Beautiful.
So I did create.
Thank you, Ricky.
I created that folder to upload Zoom recordings and chat.
Wow.
I didn't know exactly who to share it with. And we can add all of those.
So it's automatic, it's probably automatically shared with everybody who was on the planning team, and I'll just add the room managers to that list. Unless I know who to share it with, I'll do that.
Yeah.
It looks like perhaps another room is closing down as a lot more people are joining us in the main room. For those who have joined us, one of the potential frustrations of this event is that you could only go to one room. And so I want to let you know that we are recording all the rooms and that Liz will be sending out an email to everyone who registered to let them know where they can access those videos. How did people think it went today? Any ideas you have for improving things? Did you get any ideas that you think you'll take home to your community? Any recommendations for a future Sustainable Middlesex meeting? Well, we had a great turnout today. And, you know, one of the things that I was doing was inviting legislators to come to this, because this isn't just information. It's really actually a wonderful opportunity to lobby legislators. And when they come and they see that we have 25 other co-sponsors, it really got their attention. I was receiving emails from legislators in the Middlesex area saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't make it. I'm going to be away with my family." But normally I don't think they would respond that quickly. I think it was because of all of your participation and all the groups that you're affiliated that really makes a difference. And one of the things Mike Barrett has said to me is that this is the kind of stuff that we have to keep going and get in more parts of Massachusetts. So if there are people outside of Middlesex, the sustainable Middlesex area, I would be happy to work with you to get another regional group going. Just this year, North Shore Sustainable Network started with a similar goal in the North Shore. So feel free to let me know if you'd like assistance in getting another region going. But I see most of the people are right here from the Middlesex area.
So I see a comment from Roseanne in Lexington, in Lexham. Would a future sustainable Middlesex topic on how to reach people and change their minds be of value? So I think this year we tried how to reach the people, but changing their minds is a whole other thing that needs to happen. As I was preparing for this, I did you know how they say there's a certain number of people that have to be active for change to happen, and every study has a different number. The main number I think people have concentrated on is 25%. And I would say in the Yale climate, you know, somebody help me who knows that the pockets, but yeah, it divides people into like super active, which are probably most of the people here. And then there are the people who, yeah, climate change is real. We should probably be doing something about it. So they're kind of engaged, but they're not really doing. And you go down until you get to the deniers, right? The deniers forget. We don't need them. We really don't. We need those first two groups of people, anybody who, or three groups, but the second group of people who know it's a problem, but are just don't know what to do. Where do I turn? How do I get some help? All of these events we do are attempting to do that, are attempting to try to get people to think, to do differently. But I think the question of how to get them to think differently so they will do differently is an interesting one we might want to explore, because really, you know, in the end, just because you think climate change is a problem and we should do something about it, if we don't do anything about it, if we don't get more people in under the tent to do something about it, we all know what's coming. And I have two grandchildren who are 5 and 7, and breaks my heart to think about what their future might be like.
It's really an important question, though. How do you influence other people's thinkings about that? I know Liz has done a lot of work with that, with the New England Aquarium and others. And I think if we have enough interest, it would be really helpful to do that. Have a session on how to talk to people about climate change in a way that would influence them. I think one key thing is, how many of you seen the ads from Science Moms on television? Those ads are absolutely superb. And the reason they're so effective is actually, rather than focusing on facts, they're focusing on values. And that's the way you always start to have these discussions. Liz.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. Two great minds. So Roseanne, you and I should talk, and we should do some planning, because I know you're good at this too.
Now, Natasha contributed an idea that actions change beliefs and not beliefs changing actions.
Yeah, I
Um,
think, yeah.
And I think there's a lot to that.
I heard that concept, actually, it was an interview with Paul Hawken about his new book, Regeneration, looking at the book over there. And in that, he mentioned a podcast with a neuroscientist, and I was just looking through my notebook trying to remember the name of the neuroscientist. And it was this idea that it's not, we have all, we can get information, it doesn't change our actions. You know, we can, and that when we start doing something, when we start exercising more, then we change our beliefs around we start thinking I'm a person who exercises, or I'm an athlete, right? But it's not I'm an athlete, therefore I exercise. It's I exercise, therefore I'm an athlete. So it's sort of give, and that's what I like about helping people take actions that maybe aren't even, you don't even call them climate change or carbon reduction, but you just get them doing things, and then they, you know, they start doing more, and then they start thinking differently about, you know, about how they see the world because of what they're actually doing.
Natasha, that's what's so great about your program to get people started. Lisa T.
I'm a nurse and also a public health professional. I do a lot of things around behavior change, and what the research shows is that what really what correlates with change is people's motivation as well as their sense of self-efficacy. And I think when we talk to people, we don't focus on like trying to convince them, but really tapping into what their own motivation is. And as some people said, and then that ties to values as well, like what's really important to them. You know, I think when we're trying to influence people, it's more important often to listen and not to talk at people, and like starting with small things and small areas of commonality. And then what people were also talking about making things easy for people to do, and actually helping them experience success in things generates, I think, enthusiasm and more desire to take additional steps. And then the last thing I'd say around behavior change, the other thing that's really important is social norms in the community. So the more people that we get together, some people will follow more likely because the social norms in the community are leading to that kind of change as more people adapt it.
Lisa, that's so important. You know, when this started out, I would go up to people with all the facts and figures and let them know what a disaster is ahead of us. And that doesn't work.
Right. I also think I would take a little exception to what somebody said about like just leaving the deniers out. I don't think the goal is to help argue people, you know, into what we want them to believe. But I think keeping relationships open is so important for our common good. And you know, even if we disagree, that's okay. But that I care about you as a person. Like I have a neighbor who we love him. My husband and I really love him. He goes around the neighborhood and picks up trash, and he doesn't believe climate change is real. We've had some discussions about that, but I think the fact that we care about each other and he cares about him, we respect him, that's like really important, and that will lead to things, you know, in the future.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so I will correct myself. What I meant by we leave deniers out is not that we ignore them because they're unhelpful, but that in order for the movement to be successful, you don't need 100% of the people in the country being a climate activist. You only need a certain percentage of people to lead the way. And I'm sorry, I certainly did not mean that these people were forget about and we don't need them. I'm just talking about what it's actually going to take for us to make this make climate change a thing of the past.
I totally get that. I get that about you, that's not your attitude. But I think the way we do things, if we leave people out or have attitudes about them and dismiss them, what happens is it creates backlash. And I think we've seen that in our political life.
Yeah.
And it creates more polarization. And I think that's one of the leading causes of where we are today, the polarization, which also has been fed by really huge economic interests that want to keep the status quo. So just an important thing to keep in mind.
Really important.
Charlie?
Yes, Lisbeth.
I just want to ask Lisa if you're interested. I put a message to you in the chat. If you're interested in continuing this discussion with Roseanne and me and anyone else who is willing, it would be great.
Sure, I'd love to do that. I'm in two different. I'm in my phone and to here and
You
my
can
iPad
just send it to
so I'll look at the
Sustainable
chat.
Middlesex.
Okay,
Send it to
great.
Sustainable Middlesex. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also I'm working with a lot of healthcare professionals. I'm also in a fellowship, national. It's a fellowship with people across the country, and I think we're thinking about how healthcare professionals can also be part of this movement in our identity as healthcare professionals. And I think this idea of sort of reaching people around difficult issues, which is something that a lot of us do all the time, can be really valuable to the discussion. So
Yeah,
great, thank you.
I'm in a national network as well for zoos, aquariums, and nature centers. So we probably have a lot of information we could share.
That would be great. Thank you.
Lisa, the key point about Liz's work is for aquarium and zoo people, if you interact with a person only 2 or 3 minutes, what can you say in that short period of time that might get them thinking? And so I thought that was interesting.
Well, it's that we do that in healthcare too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
And healthcare professionals have a lot of credibility too. So.
Yes, thanks.
May I just say, as a parent, I'm thrilled to see that we still have one breakout room active. If anyone wants to join it, it's room number 6, engaging schools with curriculum and practices. And it's really encouraging to me that there is this attempt to get these kids engaged, but it's more than that. It's coming from the kids themselves. And Francesca is one of our room managers in there. She's a senior at Belmont High School, and she's a real leader. And so this is who's taking the mantle over from the people who are doing it now. These are the kids who care, and you are all helping us raise these kids who are informed enough to help to start to recognize that they can actually affect this sort of change.
We're getting a lot of interest from the schools as well, and so I'm excited to go back and watch the video from that breakout group to see what people are doing.
Yeah, I think those high school students are going to be really pissed at us if we don't get going on this. And they have every right to be mad.
It's actually not always pissed. A lot of them are battling depression because of the situation. And they don't necessarily feel empowered to be able to do something about it. Look at our government, right? Where are they represented in the government? Where is the youth represented? So it's really important that their voices get heard.
Brucey.
Yes, so this all leads me to think more about what Cecily Miller was talking about, one of the public art projects tied to climate awareness and action that she has led, helped lead in Arlington, was called Remembrance of Climate Futures. And it's based on the work of Tom Starr, a professor at Northeastern. This has been done with a lot of communities around Massachusetts. In Arlington, it was the first time it was done with high school students. And the high school students came up, and the concept of remembrance of climate futures is that you come up with like mini historical markers that are made up into permanent quality 8-inch metal signs that are installed at key points around the community. They are from the future looking back. And so it's like in 2030, Alewife Brook flooded over Massachusetts for the first time. And you put that on Mass Ave where it crosses into Cambridge, and it jogs people's awareness. Oh my goodness, this could happen soon. What are we going to do about it? One of the programs, one of the markers that the students wanted to do had to do with climate change curriculum in the public schools. And I don't remember if this actually made it through into a final sign, But the idea was that there would be a sign across from the high school saying in 2025, Arlington Public Schools implemented a climate change curriculum. So I think that speaks to what you're talking about, Roseanne.
That's cool. It looks like those other rooms are
I
still
would,
going.
I'd be curious if anybody has a takeaway from the room that they went to, that because since we all could only go to one room, it would be nice to hear kind of a takeaway message from some of the other rooms. So
I'm ready to jump in again. Session 8 with Bob Zog and Tony from Bolton about coaching for the transition from fossil fuel-based heating to electric is fabulous. And I was just so excited to hear both a presentation from Abode and from Heat Smart Alliance. And it so ties into what Arlington is trying to do with its Electrify Arlington campaign. So it was really useful. Thank you.
Excellent.
So it looks like actually only the school one is still active. There are a bunch of names in the other ones, but they all say not joined.
I see.
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that about the coaching session. I wanted to get those two, the company and the alliance together and show those things. That's great.
I thought Ricky had an excellent question. Any other takeaways?
looks like, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so I was, Marcia Jens was the facilitator, and I was, talking about how do you pass, town meeting bylaws and how do you run those kinds of campaigns, which was really great. It was a smaller group. I mentioned, while we were starting to talk in our group, I'm like, wow, so many people are in the Heat Smart Alliance and Abode thing. That's so cool, because it's something that I want to be able to work on as well. But what I want to do is tie together, because in our discussion, our smaller discussion, we can go into more details. We did talk about how do you bring young people into this, or how do you give young people more of a voice. But the other thing, it's the making personal connections. So you can have of course, part of the campaign thing that I was talking about, you've got to have a great website, and you've got to have a catchy phrase and a slogan, and you've got to have all of these things. But really, at the end of the day, right, passing, whether it's passing bylaws or getting, getting more people to switch their homes to heat pumps, it's about making those connections and about making connections with people that haven't before, right? So I think that it's just more and more, the more people I meet working in this area, the more experience that I get, I feel like you just got to keep making those connections. And I think Lisa was talking about that too. I just wanted to say that, and to thank everybody at Sustainable Middlesex for putting this on and bringing these people together.
I don't know if everybody knows Cindy, but she did an absolutely extraordinary campaign in Lexington to get an article passed.
Not by myself.
Restricting well, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically restricting the fossil fuel-based heating systems and cooling systems in certain buildings in the future. And she engaged really so much of the town in this that it was finally passed in our town meeting by, Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 170 votes for and 3 or 4 against. I mean, it was unbelievable majority to pass what would have normally be considered a very controversial act. So I thought that was fabulous. Yes, Hein.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to share, I was in room 7 with Cool Winchester and Cool Petaluma. And the takeaway for me, is I find that probably the key to reaching beyond the choir are these one-to-one connections that Cindy was talking about a little bit earlier. You know, these neighbor-to-neighbor connections.
Yeah, and I just will add in there, when I was listening to Cindy talk, we got those 300 block leaders, volunteers with no website, no social media, you know, no logo, no fancy graphics. It was all those neighbor to, you know, person to person connections. And so sometimes I think maybe we overemphasize the need for flashiness, and all the material to go around it, when really we just need to start talking to each other a bit more.
Really good point. Natasha, do you have any quantification of the results in Petaluma? Reduction in energy use or anything?
Well, we're only 2 months in, so we're barely getting going. We launched middle of January, so we've trained 100 people now. To 50 of them are the first half are getting into the carbon space right now, because they have to form their team and, you know, do all these kind of getting started pieces. So we will have that coming soon. You can always sign up for our newsletter, and I've tried to put some info like that in there. But yes.
Yeah, I guess 2 months is a little short, perhaps.
Yeah, well, yes, for the program, it's a 5-month-long program, and we were brand new to it too. So there's a little on ramp for us as a community as well.
Other thoughts or comments?
Well, I think Brad might have an answer to that question. I'm not sure whether you're tracking all of the mass energized communities and the carbon reductions that you've been able to track through mass energized, or maybe you don't have that data.
We have the data. It's partial data, and you know, we have maybe 20 communities that are using it, and they vary from towns like Lexington and congregations like JCAN and school groups, the Cooler Communities sites. And so it's a bit of a mix in terms of how many, you know, what fractions of people sign up and record their actions. So the data is mostly motivational. That when you come and you see, you can now see how many people have done heat pumps or driving EVs or something that have come that are part of your community. The quantitating it or quantifying it right now would be a little misleading, I think. I would say we had a pretty good session in our room 5, fairly small, but we came away with a couple of really good ideas, I think. That'll take some effort to implement, such as comparing the communities and also summarizing some of the good things happening in the communities. For example, which communities have climate action plans, which are doing, you know, zero waste programs, and sort of making it so that you can see your local community and what they're doing, what they're promoting, but also see, hey, how do we compare and where are some more ways to go? I was excited about that.
And as a reminder to everybody here, I was very interested in every single room and was only able to be in one, as I think we always feel. So everything's being recorded. It will be uploaded to the Sustainable Middlesex YouTube channel. Slides will be shared. I was in the big tent event room. And I'm willing to share the organizational document that we use to help us stay organized. It's a Google sheet, but it was invaluable for people to be able to update. As soon as we got a yes from somebody, you go to the sheet, you mark it. I'm sure you all use these tools, but I'm happy to share the tool we use. When Clean Heat Lexington started, we got Clean Heat, a lot of stuff from Clean Heat Arlington. So the more we all know what each other are doing, the more we can spend less time on getting ourselves organized and more time on doing the outreach. Oh, one thing I thought was interesting that I learned from Green Newton, and it came up before, which is using art, which we haven't done yet with LexCam, but I'd like to, is they reached out to artists. I'm not sure, how they made those contacts. And they said, can you do some artwork? And they gave them 4 focus areas, which their Earth Day will have. Clean heat, EV cars, insulate your house. I forget what the 4th one is, Mary. I don't know if you remember, but they're asking the artists to do whatever they want with these topics. And I will be curious to see what they come up with. And I think that was a very cool idea.
It is. I mean, we may want to have a separate follow-up meeting because there was other discussion about public art and how that can increase awareness.
And Ricky, that's a great way to engage the students in Lexington if we were to do something like that, where there's even a competition of who wins with getting their art displayed.
Yep, good idea.
We've been doing that in Petaluma. It's been really fun. We have somebody who's works with the art center, and we've been asking people to come up with art. And so it's turned into, we've been turning them to stamps. So you can see my Cool Petaluma stamp here. And then the newest one, let's see if I have an example, but it is fun. We didn't really give them any parameters other than it had to say Cool Petaluma on it. But it's fun to just see what people come up with. And then they get their sort of buy-in. There's another one that's more like a landscape one. I guess here you can kind of see it. It's like a little town representation. We put on a scarf. But it is fun to just engage more people, and it definitely, we're looking to do that in the schools too.
Yeah, Natasha, the Cool Winchester logo was actually developed by I think she was a freshman college student at the time, but it was a daughter of one of our volunteers who developed our logo for us. It's a great way to engage them.
Yeah. I have to take off now, you guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been fun meeting you all.
The pleasure
Thanks
is
for participating with us, Natasha.
Yeah, my
Keep us
pleasure.
posted how it goes.
I will, yeah. And I look forward to hearing how everything goes back there too. We'll have to keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I'm a stickler for keeping on time, as people in the planning group, I think, are a little familiar. And I think Mike Barrett could also confirm that. But I think we're running 45 minutes, actually 52 minutes over the end of the program. So I think that's I haven't been very good at holding it to it. This might be a good time to sign off for folks, and thank everybody for coming, and thank you for all your individual work that you're doing to address this climate crisis.
Thank you.
One thing, we'd have to shut the breakout room that's open. If we shut down the event, I think we shut down the breakout room, and they're
I
still
sent them a
going.
message that we're shutting down the event.
Okay,
So they're at least
great.
a fair warning.
Thank you.
Yeah. How many people are in that breakout room?
Thank you,
A lot.
everybody.
13.
13.
We want to make sure they get that taped, so.
I think it should just automatically start saving it once.
Okay.
Yeah. Once the session ends.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Goodbye, everyone. We're going.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys. Fabulous job.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely fabulous.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Charlie.
Do we want to have just one
Thank you,
person hop
Charlie.
into that breakout room and just let them know that we're closing down now? They may say, oh, we need just 2 more minutes, or
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
who will do that?
Who is someone going to do that?
I think Ricky just did it.
Ricky, okay.
So we will have a debriefing of the planning group, I guess, next Saturday. But boy, I'll tell you, I think it was a fabulous job everybody did. So thank you. I think it went really well.
Amazing. And Charlie, thanks for being our fearless leader. And Lisbeth for being the co-fearless leader and the whole planning board. It's amazing.
Oh, the preparation was great. That's why it went so well. So great job.
It's easy when you have a really good team working on all the different pieces.
Mhm.
I think Sophie got in the way a little bit, but other than that.
I know, where is Sophie?
She's not even locked away. I guess she just decided.
I've never seen her avoid a good Zoom.
Yeah, Sophie's contribution was limited.
Yeah, that's a good thing. She was not actually encouraged, so. Lisa, you're muted.
I was gonna say Ricky's still in that breakout room, so my guess is we should wait till she comes back just to let us know they're finished up.
I just want to thank everybody. I really enjoyed this and really got inspired by all the things that people are doing and the chance to connect. So thank you. I'm actually headed out. A friend of a friend is leading a group in Roslindale to save some open space there called the Crane Ledge Woods. And there's an action there at 1 o'clock. So I want to go and support that. It's nice to join. It's nice to join in with people and keep things moving. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Lisa.
Whoa, Lisbeth.
Woo. Where did she go? Oh, there she is. Ah,
That is
This
is the magic show part.
That's fun.
I just want to say I'm gonna sign off, but thank you. So nice to see lots of people. Chris, I don't think we've met, but nice to, thank you for all the work that you did putting this together today. It was really great.
Here they come.
Here they come. They were having too much
Thank you, Cindy.
One of the, Charlie, when we start sharing, we can reach out to the people who presented and who were in our group and see if people are willing to share their email addresses, because I'm sure at the end of each session, people were left with more questions or, I want to emulate this. How do I do it? I'm running into this problem. Did you run into this problem? Let's get those conversations going so we could share an email list. That's what last year, the people who filled out the survey, I asked each of them, are you willing to share your email address to talk about the thing? Because people could see what other towns had done. That's what the survey did. This time people get to see what other towns did by joining breakout rooms. So let's try to put that together too.
Excellent idea.
By the
Ricky.
way, I took screenshots of all the participants in the breakout rooms at the peak
good.
attendance. So we have the names of people, but it doesn't have their email addresses. But
That's great.
and I put those in a file in the shared Google.
Oh, great. But you know what? It probably also have towns, because I promised people I would update our town list so we can share our rotating slides and update that. I wrote down as many towns as I could that look different or that were in the chat. But if you took screenshots of all that, we'll get towns. So that's perfect.
Well, I think you should be able to derive from the invitation responses and be able to connect people's screen names to their emails. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but we
exactly
can't see we can see their emails, but not their town necessarily, but we'll figure it out.
We can
This
figure
has
that
all
out.
the
Yeah.
emails from the registration list.
Right.
So from the Mass Energized list would have all the emails of people who registered.
Right.
Right. I
That's
just
true. It
want
wouldn't have
to,
their towns necessarily.
I want to update the list of towns that attended because we got a lot more towns than are on our list.
Yeah, did you get Marion?
I got Marion.
And one was Cambridge and Truro.
I got that.
I saw
I don't know if we
Northampton
can
as
include
well.
Truro